All right, so how do you actually increase the cap rate of a property that you've purchased? I'm going to be going over how you can actually maximize your return based on what you purchased the property for. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Matthew. I'm a commercial real estate investor and broker based out of Southern California, but me and my team, we buy commercial property all over the country. All right, so increasing cap rate. So increasing cap rate is really all about, it really comes down to increasing the NOI because the cap rate equals the NOI divided by the purchase price. Okay, that's your cap rate. But once you purchase a property, you can't actually change your purchase price. Now, if you're still under contract or you're shopping around, you can increase your cap rate by making a lower offer, by buying at a lower price. But here, I'm assuming that you've already purchased the property and now you're looking to increase the cap rate on the property. Okay. So increasing cap rate is really just increasing your net operating income, assuming you've already purchased the property. Okay. So this is literally the definition of forced appreciation. Forced appreciation is literally increasing your cap rate by increasing your NOI through things that you control, like stabilizing the leases, increasing rents, decreasing expenses. This is stuff you can force the property to be worth more. You can force your cap rate to be higher by being strategic and forcing the appreciation. So it's quite simple. Now, there are some caveats. If the property already has really long leases, it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, for you to improve the cap rate because you're locked into the terms of those leases. So if you're buying a Starbucks at a 6 cap, okay, and it has 15 years left on the lease and it's already a triple net lease, I'm sorry, but you're not going to increase your cap rate. Increasing cap rate is a lot easier to do on multi-tenant leases that are gross. When you have a single tenant net lease, your chances are you're not going to increase your cap rate other than those annual increases that are already embedded in the lease. This is the definition of forced appreciation. You force the cap rate to go up. So how do you actually increase cap rate? And then I'm going to go into an example in a minute on a property I actually purchased, stabilized, increased the cap rate, and what that property looks like now. Okay. So how do you increase the cap rate / NOI? Because as we discussed, once you buy the property, increasing the NOI is increasing the cap rate. So first you got to increase income. I know obviously, that's simple, but yeah, how do you increase income? You can increase income by increasing the rent on the tenants. So one of my favorite ways to buy property is buying property where the leases are way below market. And I know I'm not saying anything new here. This is literally value add investing 101. You buy something where the leases are really low, or they're gross leases, and you can increase the income by making them triple net and getting some of that reimbursed. You can also do it by leasing out vacancy. So in commercial real estate, you typically pay a cap rate of current NOI. So if a building is 80% occupied, making 100,000, and you're going to pay a 6 cap on that, you buy the property for this amount, you're technically getting that last 20% that's vacant for free. So if you lease out that vacant space, you can resell the property at the same cap rate you bought it for, but now your revenue's higher because that 20% vacancy is now gone. So now you have a higher net operating income because you've leased out vacancy. And then there's also ancillary income. Like some people, something I've done is I've leased out parking lots to event spaces, to food trucks. You can get creative on leasing it out. Even sometimes on vacant space, I'll have someone that says, "Hey, we want to lease it out for 3 months to, we're doing a movie nearby, and we need an office space for the directors and things like that to coordinate." Like stuff like that can actually pop up. Depending on your location, the better your location, the better opportunities you'll get. But still, I mean, there's always opportunities for ancillary income, especially if you have a lot of land. You can do, truck parking in the back there. You can really get creative with other ways to bring in revenue depending on the asset. The next is to decrease expenses. By decreasing expenses, you're actually increasing your net operating income. Net operating income is income minus expenses. You decrease expenses, you increase your net operating income. So the best way to do that is to bid out all your vendors. When you buy a building, I can't tell you how many times I buy a building and these guys are paying $600 a month for trash on a commercial strip center, and I call a couple other companies and I get it for $290. Just by doing that, I've dropped the expenses on the building and increased my net operating income. Now, obviously, this only works if it's gross. It means I pay the expenses. If it's triple net, then those expenses are passed through, but then I decrease the triple nets on the tenants, which means I can increase their base rent, but which will also increase NOI. That's a topic for another time. You can also do proper CAM reconciliation. Now, I have a whole video on CAM reconciliation. I think I do. If I don't, I'll put one out. But CAM reconciliation is essentially saying you buy property, you make 100,000 in revenue, you have 20,000 in expenses. Though that 20,000 expenses is actually billed back to the tenant. So you actually collect $120,000 from the tenants. 20,000 of that goes to expenses, and 100,000 of that is your net operating income. So the tenants pay for the expenses. They pay property tax, insurance, trash, utilities. Common area means like every once in a while you got to clean the parking lot. You got anything to do with the building, any expenses to the building is passed directly onto the tenants on a percentage of their occupancy. So if a tenant owns 10%, they pay 10% of the expenses. So at the end of the year, you go like, okay, I expected that the expenses were 20,000, but they were actually 30,000. So all the tenants as a whole collectively owe me another 10 grand. So I got to go back and go like, okay, you're 10% of the building, you owe me $1,000. You're 25% of the building, you owe me $2,500. I gotta collect that last 10,000 that was an overage. Now, obviously, I'm going to do everything I can as a landlord to keep those expenses as low as possible. But at the end of the day, insurance is going to go up, property taxes is going to go up. So as those go up, I need to be able to collect the difference from those tenants through the CAM reconciliation. And another thing, just like bidding out expenses, you can appeal property taxes, you can bid out insurance, you bid out all your expenses. So by doing that, I'm able to decrease my expenses. And if it is CAM'd, that means if it is the tenants are paying those expenses, by decreasing the expenses, I now have more leverage to I have more leverage to increase their base rent, which directly translates to more net operating income, which is going to increase my cap rate. So decrease expenses, increase income. The last one is improve leases. So what does that mean? Better structured leases help you maximize NOI. Through the CAM reconciliation, it's one of the easiest ways to increase your cap rate is buy a building with gross leases, means you're paying all the expenses. I call them gross leases because they're gross, they're disgusting, means the landlord is paying all the expenses. This is very common in retail, industrial, and some of the other asset classes. So I restructure the leases as they expire into triple net leases. And now just by doing that, I don't even have to increase their base rent. All I do is I tack on expenses. So if someone's paying me $1,000 a month, I tell them, hey, your portion of the expenses is $290. So now instead of owing me $1,000 a month, you owe me $1,290, and that's just your portion of the expenses. That's your portion of the trash. I'm not using the trash as a landlord. I'm not using the trash. Why should I pay for the trash? I'm not using the water for the building. You guys are. You guys should split the water bill. If someone drives into the building, for example, instead of hitting the brake, they hit the gas pedal when they're parking, and they ran into the building, the insurance company is going to come and fix that. That's a benefit to you as the operator, not me. So it makes sense that the tenants pay their own CAMs. So taking all the leases to triple net and making sure that you have proper escalations in the lease. This is key in commercial. You want to make sure that the leases are increasing appropriately. Preferably, you want to outpace inflation. So if inflation, let's say, is 2.5%, which is typically somewhere between 2, 3, maybe between 3 and 4, I like at least 3% increases in my leases, or at the very least, many leases you can make them increase through CPI, which is inflation. So if inflation is 2.5%, the lease is going to increase by 2.5%. That's simple. So all those increases, as they kick in, they also inch up your cap rate. So your cap rate can go from a 6 to a 6.25 to a 6.6 to a 6.75 as the years go on, because your rent escalations, your rent increases are kicking in. So that's simply how you maximize NOI. I'm going to go through an example right now, but you increase the income, you decrease the expenses, and then you improve the lease structures to maximize your net operating income. So this is a real world example. Shopping center in Wichita, Kansas. I purchased it for $1,050,000, and it had an NOI at the time of $63,456, slightly over a 6 cap. And people are like, I remember when I was telling people about this deal, they're like, why would you buy a multi-tenant strip center with local tenants at a 6 cap when you can go get a Starbucks at a 6 cap? And they were missing the picture. The picture was I was able to increase the cap rate through stabilizing the leases. By taking the leases to triple net, many of the tenants were gross. By increasing the rent, some tenants were way below market. They were paying way too little in rent. So by taking them to market and converting their leases to triple net, I took the NOI from 63,456 to 129,571. I more than doubled the NOI, and by doing that, I was able to more than double the cap rate. Like I said, increasing the NOI is increasing the cap rate. especially if you already purchased the building. If not, you can try to decrease the purchase price. By decreasing the purchase price, you can increase the cap rate as well on the entry. And then if you can do both, like for example, this one was advertised at 1.4 million, but I was able to get it at 1.05 because of that. And there was vacancy in this one, or what we call economical vacancy, means there was a tenant that wasn't paying. Now, I didn't even kick him out. All I did was I got him to start paying rent. Just by doing that, I increased the NOI. So I didn't pay for that tenant's income because he wasn't paying at the time, but I took ownership and I was like, okay, from now on, either you pay or you leave. And then once a landlord came in that actually drew the line that said, if you don't pay, you're going to leave, then they actually started paying, and that also increased the NOI. So increasing NOI is simply being able to stabilize the property and increase revenue. Again, if the property already has long leases on it, it's going to be very difficult to increase the net operating income because it's locked in. It's already there. They sign a long lease, and they do that on purpose. Starbucks, for example, signs a long lease because they want to know what they're going to be paying in rent for the next 10, 12, 15 years. They don't want you to come and, they don't want to do a 5-year lease. At the end of 5 years, market rents have gone up and you go and you increase rent on them. Simply, that's how it works. That's how you increase cap rate. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for making it to the end. If you guys want to connect, I love talking real estate. So if you guys get me on the phone, I will talk so much. I won't shut up. So if you guys want to reach out by phone, text, email, or check us out at suprcap.com, my small investment firm here. And I'm going to put a link in the description to my Skool community. That's where people, post deals, and we actually go into more details about specific properties we either have under contract or we own, and what we think about them and how we can stabilize them, and so far so forth. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.